Hi everybody, it's Gavin Fox here from Dublin Tech Talks. Good to speak to you. We have a great show to you today. We have Louise Bernstein, who is Director of Product for HubSpot. As always, our shows are brought to you in association with Iconic Counting. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to Louise about her journey, about how she's got into product, where she's got her love for product technology, her how she's built her teams, working in a growing company like HubSpot, what she's learned the last 12, 18 months, what that taught her, and a bit of everything in between. So we hope you enjoy, and Louise, welcome to Dublin Tech Talks. Good to see you.
Thank you. Great to be chatting with you both today.
And Dawa, good to see you again. Welcome.
Nice to see you too. Thank you, Gavin. Hi,
So Louise, Director of Product in HubSpot. You've been there about 2.5 years. What's your role, and kind of how have you got to where you are today?
So my role is Director of Product for our Flywheel product group, which is essentially the group driving the enterprise tier or the upmarket tier of everything we do. And we also solve for HubSpot itself. So HubSpot, the business, also runs upon HubSpot product. So that's why we are expert in all things upmarket for HubSpot, as well as our upmarket tier. And I've been doing product management for about 15 years. I love it. I don't see myself doing anything else. And at the moment, I'm in the phase where I'm more removed from the product building, which is where I started, hands-on stuff. And now I'm managing teams. So really the people have become my product versus the hands-on software itself.
And was that a big change for yourself when you moved away from your day-to-day into more of the people management side? Was that a kind of a difficult mindset change, or was that something that you kind of embraced?
Well, it happened over time. It was always it had to be a slow mind shift change, because as I start to become a senior product manager in companies, you start being involved in building teams, and you start being involved in coaching others. And then slowly over time, you realize, oh, this is what I'm doing most of the day now. And I'm actually having FOMO, missing out on the hands-on product building side. But really the official change is when I became a group product manager, which is really when you move away from the building software. And sometimes it is hard to step away from the stuff you really fell in love with, which is being in those workshops, working with engineers and designers and analysts, and getting into the nub of the issue and user interviews. But I do love the people side of building great product teams so much. So it's a happy transition. It was a transition, but I'm loving where I'm at now, which is you're building healthy teams to build great product. Without a healthy team, you're never going to build great stuff. So that's where I'm focused.
And can I just interject there, Louise? I'm curious to know what you would define as a healthy team, and how you ensure that's implemented within HubSpot, the healthy team ethos.
It is, and it really is. You have to be people first, work second. And sometimes that's you can get so caught up in just the work. But if you don't think of your team first, you actually will never know what you potentially didn't do. You'll never know what impact you potentially couldn't drive, because you're not getting the most out of those around you. So a healthy team is when they become more than the sum of their parts. So you're not relying on superstars or an amazing idea. Actually, the team can generate this wonderfulness themselves. And I split it into 3 different categories. One is so having a great strategy, having a good North Star or a vision of where you want to get to. So you know where you are, you know where you want to get to. So that's more the work side, and measurements of success and all of that. But then you have those other 2 pieces of what is the operating system of your team? How do you think about communication, over communication? How do you think about transparency? How do you think of the cadence of when you come together and you discuss big topics? What is the structure of your team? Are you scaling your team in a way that's balanced? You're not hiring all product managers that have no product designers to work with. Are you hiring all these engineers and no analysts? So what is that balance of also growing your team? That's also part of your operating system. And if you don't have balance, it just creates tension. And then the thing that actually surrounds everything, which is really that health and culture piece. So fostering psychological safety. Do you have trust? Do people trust each other? And are people not afraid to speak their mind, even if they might be wrong? And is it okay for them to make mistakes? How do you foster a sense of learning? So instead of failure, it's, oh, great, we learned that. Now let's pivot and doing something else. So that sense of psychological safety is critical for that trust building. And then you get more voices in the room because they're not afraid to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
You're not fostering that. It's then you kind of come to the feelings of belonging and the diversity in your team, which is also part of the health of it.
Yeah. And do you define it for the product management team, or is this company wide? Is it like a company wide initiative, like cross-functionally, team building and team happiness, or is it just your team?
It's something that I've instilled everywhere I've been, and that's what really attracted me to HubSpot, because it is so part of our ethos, and especially ensuring that people in this, and really in this work from home environment, have people still feel a sense of belonging to the team, still feel a sense of psychological safety, because it is hard to feel a connection when everyone is not in the same room.
Yeah.
So you have to work really hard.
And what kind of tools do you use to build that, or is it sort of meeting based, or retros, or I don't know, feedback loops, or what would you recommend how people foster this?
Well, the first is the mindset that not everyone has the same communication style. Some people are very, very confident, but may not be saying the best idea. So don't always lean into the person who might be the most vocal. Tap into the people who have a different communication style, and that's cool. People who like to be reading things up front and comment, or don't rush to make a decision in one meeting, have an ability to follow up afterwards, especially when people can comment on docs. Create a whiteboard before, during, and after a session like Miro or Lucidchart, and have an environment where you ask people's opinion proactively as well. So some people may not volunteer their opinion until you actually draw them out, until you ask them. Also shows confidence that you really want to hear from them as well in the session. So knowing that just as a mindset, you have to tap into everyone. And if someone's quiet, that does not mean that they don't have anything to offer.
Yeah, that's
And then
super.
you have tools.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I noticed that you spent a while working, I think, in Montreal, right, in Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was very curious. I also worked stateside for about 8 years in the Bay Area, and I guess I'm curious to know if you saw many differences between, stateside, or I guess it's Canada, right, but North America and Europe in terms of working styles, and if that informed your ultimate approach to this team building.
It's a really interesting question, and I've never actually thought about that too deeply, especially between Montreal. And actually, I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area, because a lot of our main customers were there, as well as when the Montreal company were purchased, it was actually by a company in San Diego. And it was something we had to be very proactive in thinking about and working through. And because Montreal is a bilingual city, when I say bilingual, really it's French, but English is spoken widely, but not everyone speaks English in the office. So it was normal to ensure that you didn't use jokes that not everyone would understand, or colloquialisms, especially because I was coming from Ireland.
Mm.
So people were also respectful in doing that for me. But because not everyone's first language was English, we had to be really cognizant of that. And if you were writing big memos, don't use huge, long, no one reads them anyway if they're boring, big, long, complicated English words, and same if people were writing something in French. So it was just easier for people to pick up what the message was. And have them in both languages where you could, to make sure it would resonate well. And it did take a while for the American company to understand how important that was, and not just to default to English, English, English. It was actually the law, Bill 101, the law was that everything had to be in French first. And it took probably a good 6 to 10 months for that to really resonate. And for them to hire a translator and ensure things were well understood, and in company meetings have some in French. So there was a big learning curve there. That English is, even if a language is default for you, respect the fact it's not default for everybody. Mm-hmm. And then I think between Ireland and the States, even between States and the US, the lingo is different, the humor is different. And we've had a few incidents actually quite recently in HubSpot where our Irish humor can be quite sarcastic and quite saucy. And things could be misinterpreted. And we've had some incidences where things have been misinterpreted, and we're really not, the language user has really not had that intent. So you have to be thinking about that all the time, especially because we have people from 30 different countries, probably, plus in HubSpot.
And Louise,
where the location is.
Your teams are, where are your teams at the moment? They're
my teams are in now a couple of different states in the US, and then mostly Ireland, but soon Spain and the UK.
So that problem will be multiplied pretty quickly. And how do you you've lived that problem, and you've been able to do it. It's not a common problem for a lot of people coming in, so that's going to be an education on its own, isn't it?
It is. And it's not even about language, it's about different people as well as different cultures. You have to tap into just the way they like to work. So understanding how people work and the way they like to work is really important. So you just don't imprint your style on other people.
Yeah.
Especially because I used to work with a lot of people in Japan and South Korea in other companies. And there was a real adaptation. In a meeting room, it's very normal for people not to volunteer their opinion unless they are asked for it. So you have to be very cognizant of that.
And is HubSpot, is it a remote? It's not remote first. I mean, it's obviously become remote first because of COVID, but beyond COVID, are you planning on getting people back into the office within the regional areas?
Our offices will open. I think our Irish office will open last. That's fine. But we're going to have what we're calling future of work, which is everybody has selected if they want to stay full-time remote, if they want to go into the office full-time, or if they want to go flex. Flex is 2 to 3 days in an office. And I personally have chosen flex. So that is now the way we work forever now. And for everyone who works from home, either full-time or part-time, you get a stipend to spend on making your work office comfortable and your work environment comfortable. So I have spent this on the standing desk I'm using now, plants to make it comfortable. A lot of my team have spent it on fancy coffee machines. So we really want to make your work life, whether you're at home or in the office, as comfortable as possible. And we're taking the ethos of your company culture is not in the hallways. It's in just the people who work for the company. So how do we not concentrate culture in just HubSpot offices? Because HubSpot offices are very well known as being fun, just like a Google office or a LinkedIn office. There's a lot going on. So we want to bring that into people's homes as well.
And that's going to be
Awesome.
that's a fundamental kind of change then, because
Mhm.
what I know your offices, I've watched the new one get built and obviously been in
Yeah.
your original one. Like they're lovely to be in, and it's, you know, that is a sell of the organization to work in such a nice place. And obviously you're giving at the moment, but that's a sell to a lot of people who join a type of company like that. So I'm guessing leadership and yourself and whoever is very cognizant of that, and it's managing people that, I think we mentioned this before, about being in the room and how you get the best out of them and keeping them engaged in the ethos of the business. That's probably challenge 2.0 at the moment, is it?
Absolutely. It is. In work settings or personal settings, people do have more fun when we're in person. We all got pretty sick of Zoom quizzes within the first few meetings of lockdown. So we have to get really creative in how we create some sense of fun and connectivity outside of work. And one way, so I'm part of the Women at HubSpot leadership group, and one thing we're trying to do is how can we do remote events but have something tangible as part of them. So I've organized a graffiti event in May where we're using actually this group called With Locals. They are awesome. They're an alternative to or they're just like the Airbnb experiences. And we're sending out physical materials to people so they can create a physical piece of art with everyone else remotely.
Yeah.
So there's that balance between your through a screen still, but you still have something tangible and physical. And that is hopefully bringing a little bit of that cultural connected fun and feeling without it just feeling very digital all the time.
Yeah.
But we have to keep on being very creative, because looking at a screen all day is very tiring, even if it's to do something outside of work.
Yeah, and definitely like working on the work-life balance and bringing the fun into the home. Like that's so interesting that, you know, HubSpot's actively pursuing that. I don't know how many other companies are. Have you heard anything from how the other tech giants are kind of dealing with this problem of bringing the work-life balance and the office culture into the home environment? Do you think this is a new challenge for tech moving forward?
It's a learn as we go. It's a learn as we go. Because I think we all over-indexed on just Zoom events, and they worked for a while, but then we actually had to pare back because people stopped coming to the same degree.
Yeah.
Because of course, you know, if you're on Zoom, we're very Zoom centric. We're very niche, so we turn our cameras on for every meeting as well. But that does have a cognitive load to it.
Yeah.
So also something is we're still trying to send out what we call swag. I can't even remember what swag stands for, but company gear. Yeah, like hoodies or a jigsaw for International Women's Day. So things that are also tangible and physical. We're really trying to keep that going. And if you're a new hire, you get a big backpack of physical goodies that tie a little HubSpot into where you're working, and you don't necessarily need to be in the office.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
yeah, I'll go. No, Dawa, go.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to ask about new hires. Do you have like an in-person onboarding then to kind of bring them up to speed with everything HubSpot, or is that fully remote as well?
It's fully remote. In fact, I was the introducer of the last group. So we rotate across all of our, like for our EMEA cohort, where we rotate amongst all of the directors. So I was lucky enough to meet the new hire group 2 weeks ago, of which there were 70 across EMEA. We just can't do that in person, but it was just wonderful to see, because we're now so remote friendly. It was wonderful to see how many people were in these different countries, all starting and all part of the same onboarding. versus you have to be in a physical location. But yes, we have 8. We've adjusted it to be remote friendly. So instead of it being 2 full weeks all day, the L&D program managers, they completely reinvented how we onboarding people to be a little bit more lightweight. It's still, of course, all on Zoom, but there's more work off Zoom, and they've completely adjusted it so it remains engaging. And there's also a lot of get to know you events, so people can build relationships with people. That was some of the best part of onboarding, is the relationships that you build, and you remain friends even if you work in different teams, but like you were a cohort.
Yeah, it's kind of like the first week at university. They're the people that you stick with.
Yeah.
And Sarah Louise, you mentioned hiring and scaling so much, and your team was one of the first kind of not centrally located teams that you managed. How has the process over the last 18 months changed, even how you hire or the people? You must be accessing better talent and more diverse talent than ever.
You hit the nail on the head. So our product team was the first product team to really embrace distributed teams. And so we were starting years ago. So we're actually quite well placed. There was no real difference for when we all started to work from home, where there actually was a bigger difference for other teams that really focused in on co-location, which has a lot of benefits. I mean, being in one room does have a massive benefit. You can get things done really quickly. However, you can optimize for homogeny by doing that. Where if you hire talent first, location second, you can optimize a little bit more for diversity, and it happens a little bit more organically. However, we did learn there are problems with that when we started mismatching people with time zones, where you had one person who's the only person in one time zone and everybody else was in another. It was quite hard to match working hours. So we actually created some stress there for people. So we have rethought how we do that, and we're clustering people together in similar time zone. They don't have to be in the same office, but at least in their same similarish time zones, we overcome some of the struggles that we had at the beginning. And then really ensuring that, another thing we were purposeful after we learned the hard lesson of when people are working across multiple regions and they're all using online collaboration tools, making sure people understand that different people communicate differently and how to maximize that instead of just leaning into one person talking on a screen.
Do you think it's I'll put you on the spot here now because you've hired people, obviously better now than it was before, but do you think that it will allow for better creativity of product? Do you think things will kind of normalize itself, obviously, when things go back to the way it was? I don't think it will ever go back to the way it was, like that whole 18 months ago. But do you think it now you're getting better creativity, you're getting better, your business will be better for it? Or do you still think there's going to be a kind of a learning curve on that before it kind of starts peaking?
I think we are absolutely stronger for it, because like now we are forcing people to work in one way. But when we go back to giving people the option to work the way that suits them, so in an office, fully remote, or having that flex, you're allowing people to do their best work in their best way. But this will absolutely add to the impact of any team, because the person is more comfortable in the way that they're working, and that's back to the health of a team. The stronger the health of a team, the more impact that they can generate. I really do think this is something that, thank goodness, there's at least some silver lining of this, where it's been a forcing function for all companies to recognize the value of flexible working. And we'll naturally get more diversity, especially in gender, with the flexible working of teams, because that was a huge disadvantage because unfortunately women do carry most of the mental load of family caring. So that flexibility is just really going to amplify their ability to enter into teams which have what would have been from more traditional hours in office hours.
100%. I'm conscious of the time, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. There was something me and Dawa actually were talking about beforehand, and it's something that I'm heavily involved in Dublin at the moment. It's around the kind of STEM and WITS and getting, more diverse teams, not women, but into technology and how we do that. I know you're heavily involved in that as well, Louise. So what's your thoughts on where we are at the moment, where we can get to? I was giving out beforehand about the conversation is still the same conversation that we've had year on year, and there's small solutions starting, but as Dawa said, it was like fundamental changes need to be made in a lot of areas for it to really get going. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and what more we can do.
Oh my goodness, do you have another half an hour? There's two ends of the spectrum. One is creating workplaces that are more family friendly and have the psychological safety and the feeling of belonging. They really work on their culture, but it's not celebrating one type of personality. So that's one end, which we've touched on a little bit. There's also, before even people enter the workplace, how are we positioning STEM? How are we creating role models that are visible to more women, to say it's hard to think of yourself as being something if you've no one like you who is that thing. And removing the idea. I talk to a lot of girls in girls' schools, and so many of them think that tech is kind of just about coding, and they're missing out on this positioning of how creative it is. Because if you want to drive change, tech is where it's at. That's where you drive change, regardless of what topics you're interested in. You layer upon any subject, tech, you can drive change and really help people. And you can do it very creatively. The behavioral psychology roles in technology, like behavioral economics, or you have this wonderful creativity in how you design solutions that are user-friendly, accessible. And if we don't have all the diversity in people building these products, I don't think they realize that they're left out of the solution. There's this wonderful book, Invisible Women, and it just basically, the whole book is examples of how women have been left out of solutions, and they're just not designed for 50% of the population because they weren't in the room. So realizing that technology is all around us, do you want a seat at the table in how that impacts you? And that seat can be incredibly creative and impactful. It's not just people coding. And that picture of technology is just not presented to girls in girls' schools. It certainly wasn't in mine, but I mean, that's a little while ago. But I'm not sure if things have changed enough. Well, I know things have not changed enough.
I actually heard one of your podcasts, and you mentioned there was a teacher who brought in coding into your school. That was similar to mine. I remember in primary school as well, there was one teacher who 30 minutes at lunchtime you got to be at a computer, and you created on BBC computers. And like that was it. That was my computers. And I went off and did computer applications after doing that. So I'm glad I dropped out because I was really poor at programming.
So am I.
But I completely agree with and I was saying this beforehand, with what technology is. Like, programming isn't for everybody. There's a certain type of person that will be a programmer. And I always feel that that's what we talk about, rather than get people involved in technology. Like I only know a few people who really enjoy programming or coding, and probably they don't enjoy it most of the time because they're stuck with their earphones in and they're plugging away. But there's so much more in technology, and that I think that's how the conversation needs to evolve, and from schooling all the way through.
Yeah. Do you like problem solving? Yes, great. STEM for you.
And you communicate. Brilliant. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be that, for some people, they would like a hybrid role, because we're very kind of split, and even in school, you have to choose certain topics at A level, and then degree, it's very specialized. Whereas some people do well, like they're kind of global thinkers across disciplines and having this like multidisciplinary mindset. Like maybe they become product managers because they get to think across all different functions of a product, right, and company. Whereas some people, I guess, do better specializing in one thing. So it's different things, different people, but maybe there's more scope for these hybrid roles, or for people to bounce around even within companies to find their niche, to see where they fit.
That is, you just described the absolute perfect rounded person who enters any type of tech role. You having a life experience, business experience, subject matter experience. You can be a lawyer and you come in and you add technology to your experience and you can solve problems within the law space that you weren't able to before. And if you, so that a product manager, as you said, needs to be doing a little bit of marketing, a little bit of customer success, a little bit of sales. In how we make decisions. Not the code is not the end of your product. It's how people, ensuring people can access it, ensuring people can understand it. You need way more skill sets than just the precise technology.
But also there's this, like, you could sort of, you know, work shadow other disciplines or rotate, even like try, like it's almost like a work experience within a company, because you have more empathy for different people's roles, because it's easy for, you know, designers and developers to be like, who's right or who's dictating the product. Like nobody should, right? It should be true collaboration. But once you understand the complexities of someone's role and what they're up against, you have more empathy to want to include them, and it creates a more inclusive culture if you can generate this empathy.
Yes,
because I know
technology is a layer upon everything else that naturally includes all the other experiences that you've had. You don't need to start in technology to have a career in technology.
I think it's going to be interesting in a few years when like no code comes more into things, and coding actually won't be a necessity for a lot. It'll be automated, and it will be, you know, you won't need as many developers to do it, where the more creative, understanding person is going to be the right, like that's the person that's going to be in more demand. Like product has exploded in 5-6 years as such a demand, especially maybe other markets in Ireland anyway, has been, you know, suddenly nobody wanted a project manager, they all wanted product managers and product owners, and people's CVs changed very quickly. It was magic. So I think it will evolve, and I think the companies that adapt that ethos of, you know, let's take code out of it, and we'll always have that problem, or we can fix that as another, you know, what are we looking for in a person, and hire that person. That, like, the more I hear that, I know HubSpot are big into that, and some other organizations, but to me that's how we solve a big problem of kind of trying to balance up teams, or even trying to get different and kind of ethnic environments into teams.
That makes a lot of sense.
Jeez, can I press pause on that? No, but before I let you go, Louise, I'll ask the last question. The last 18 months, 12 months, since February last year, what has it changed for you? What have you learned or found that you've kind of had to adapt or change, and to become a better leader, or even just to kind of be where you are today? Because you're a very positive person, and you've been very successful. So the last 12 months with anybody has been challenging. So what are your kind of aha moments or takeaways for the last few months?
The doubling down on the importance of team health before everything. And it's always been something that I've been working on, and with other leaders who are like-minded, and how important it is. But just doubling down on that has been really, really, really critical. And learning about burnout. I've learned a lot about burnout and the signs of burnout that are more than just being fatigued. It's cynicism, it's a disconnection from enjoying your day, let alone your work. There's a lot more to it. So over the last year, I think my own knowledge and my own empathy towards the munge together of work life as well as personal lives together is just absolutely critical. You have to think of a person, of their work life and their personal life. It's one of the same. It always has been. But really recognizing that in the last year has really come forward, and it's just really important of how we're thinking about building healthy teams. And even when we go back to a more normal work-life balance, and if we're in offices again, I'm not going to change how I approach that holistic thinking. So it's been a great learning.
Brilliant. Thanks a mil for your time, Louise. Dawa, thanks a mil for your time as well.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Director of Product with HubSpot, thanks a mil for your time. Dawa, we'll speak to you soon.
Great.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
So that was Louise Bernstein, Director of Product with HubSpot, and Dawa Riley, who's Director of Product Design with CleverCards. Really interesting conversation there with Louise and Dawa, just about creating highly successful teams, hiring the right talent, letting them be the best people they can be, and just really being empathetic at the moment to people, but also really understanding their needs and wants. If you enjoyed that, please subscribe to our social channels. This will be released on our Spotify, our Apple, and our YouTube channels.